Hi, Edith. How's it
How
going?
are you? What's up?
Thanks so much for being with us today.
Of course, anytime.
All right, so it's my pleasure today to interview Edith. She's from 500 Startups, and obviously we're going to talk a little bit about how you as startups should evaluate joining an accelerator. There are many accelerators available to you, many different options, focus on different things. And Edith is going to help us understand the landscape a little bit better. She's going to be as unbiased as possible, but of course she is from 500 Startups, one of the very best accelerators out there. So to get started, Edith, let's just introduce yourself a little bit, and then specifically talk a little bit about where you invest, what are your check sizes, your focuses as well, and we'll start there.
Yeah. To start, maybe I can give a quick overview for 500 in general and how we work. So to start, actually, I think the whole accelerator sort of industry really started with YC. I actually personally have also invested in some YC company and a big fan. 500 started about 7 years ago. Unlike YC, which started in Boston, and then later on moved here, and actually started in Mountain View. So for us, it's no longer 500 startups. It's actually 1,700 startups. But of course, too late for us to change the name, so we stick with that. But really, like the way that I look at it as an investor, the accelerator program is a method for investments. Why is that? Because for us now, we do it 4 times a year. Usually about 2,000 companies will apply. And we actually do all these applications through AngelList online. You basically answer a whole bunch of questions and a video submission. And then out of these 2,000 companies, we will select about 30 to 50 companies, and then we'll give them an offer to invest. And right now, the current terms are $150,000 for 6% of the company. And then we will invite them to come to either San Francisco or Mountain View to spend 4 months with us. The biggest difference between 500 and YC, and actually Techstar also been around for a long time, is we have very strong focus on marketing, which means that if you don't have a product, we actually don't recommend you to come at all because we have nothing to work with in terms of marketing or growth. And then we spent 4 months at our office night and day. So there's a lot of classes that we provide. Again, it really focuses on marketing. It is like a startup school. So you attend lectures night and day. We bombard you all type of mentors. And then we end the program after the 4 months with a demo day. Usually, what I've seen recently is after the 4 months, most of the startup, again, it all depends because not all startups are created equally. But most of the folks will raise anywhere for either another 200, 250K up to three or four I've seen right after demo day. And then valuation could be anywhere from 3 million up to 12 or 13 million these days that I've seen.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned it already a little bit, but there's kind of an ideal startup. I mean, having worked with you a little bit and actually introed some startups to you, I've realized that there's kind of a certain type of startup that 500 Startups is looking for. Can you describe a little bit more that ideal startup that you think is going to really be successful at 500?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, not all startups are created equal. Right. And in fact, let's say my background is, half of my career is enterprise software. Siebel, Oracle, Autodesk, and the other half mainly is my tenure with Dolphin Browser, which is a mobile browser mostly on the Android. So let's say if I'm looking at a B2C mobile app, my first question is, have you launched or no? Yes or no? If no, it's not that I don't like you, but there's nothing for us to talk about, right? Because if you're a B2C mobile app, then I always going to ask you, what's your install base, what's your MAU, DAU, retention, churn, and even you don't make money is okay, but what could be the potential ARPU? Because now the mobile industry is quite mature. So unless you're working on some really crazy AR stuff, which in my head is actually a feature, right? But if it's something downloadable on iOS, on Android, we're basically looking at some really fundamental numbers. Right. Versus if it's B2B, we don't necessarily need you to be, but still, if in a SaaS type model, most of our startup already doing at least 10 to 30,000 MRR already, because now we have such a wide variety, of applicants from all over the world. If it's more enterprise, again, it's okay not to make money, but at least 2 or 3 pilot customers that you can brag about. So to demonstrate that you have basic product market fit. Otherwise, if we're teaching you how to sell and how to actually create your funnel and go through the whole figure out sales strategy and life cycle, but you have nothing to sell, then it's not a really good use of your time.
Okay, right on. You mentioned the MRR numbers for enterprise. What on the consumer side, you said you had some pretty specific metrics you're looking for. Can you give us some specific metrics for a consumer app that you're looking for? For example, William Heathershaw's app. If he wants to get into 500, how many DAU does he need?
Again, because I'm sort of like a mobile freak, right? There's actually, everybody can Google it. I think it doesn't matter with Flurry or App Annie, they actually have a really good reference chart. So let's say, for example, if William is doing a dating app, right?
It's kind of the opposite of what he's doing, just to be clear.
Okay. Okay. So let's say if he's a dating app, and the retention of a good dating app after 3 months, if it's work, probably should be drop off, right? You can't keep looking for a date after a year. That's probably not a good dating app for you, right? And probably at the beginning, your DAU, you're pretty high, but it will go down. Versus, let's say, Facebook, of course, is an extreme example. Facebook, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days install to MAU ratio is 80%. That's insane, which means that, out of the 100,000 people, at least 80,000 people still using it and not uninstall and still using it almost every day. That's like 2 sides of the spectrum. So you really have to know your numbers. And most of these, App Annie or Apptopia, which is one of my investments, a much cheaper version of it, and all give you actually quite detail in terms of monthly active, or not daily active, but at least sort of monthly active users. So you can get a sense that, okay, am I within range? One of the tricks that a lot of entrepreneurs do, which, by the way, like I would do the same thing too, is right before you pitch for money, spend a little money, so look like it's right, like increasing. Everybody does that, so you can't really fool me. But still, you do have to, show the fact that you're growing, right? Otherwise, and there's another trick, which is when you're pitching, sometimes things happen. We all learn, and it takes time. And let's say if a startup that started in 2015, and now this is 2017, but you still only have 100, 200,000, you really have to think about how you actually explain that. Why did it take you 2 years? So sometimes I may change sort of the way, we did pivot it, or we really like relaunched this 5 months ago. So it doesn't seem like you've been working on the same thing again and again. It still doesn't work.
Right. A minute ago, I think you mentioned you get on average about 2,000 applications for 100 spots. Is that correct? For 30 spots.
30 to 50 spots, yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the most common reasons that applications get denied?
It's all numbers, number one.
It's all numbers.
And then I think that the team itself, so sometimes people like to, say that we're working, but all of them are still sort of moonlighting and part-time and still have a full-time job. If you're not full-time, there's no way. And then the third reason, as you know, with fixed price investment, right, 150,000 for 6%. And it happens sometimes with international companies that, the terms are not as favorable for founders. Some, really distant, you're still in a seed round, but the founder only have 30% left in equity. Then, after we take the 6%, they will have a very, very hard time to get follow-on funding. And in that case, we usually sort of suggest them to sort of clean that up first before you join. Because a lot of times the founders come to Accelerator, particularly coming to Silicon Valley, this after the 4 months, of course, one of the key goal is to want our help to raise another round.
Right.
So if the cap table is already sort of messy, there's not much we can do.
Right. I hope everyone catches that in the audience, that especially if this is your first startup, this is something that's often commonly done, is where you'll get really excited about raising your first round or raising some money, and you might not have done it before, but later on you realize, because of the terms you took on that first investment, it actually keeps you from getting investment later.
Yep. And a couple other things also to think about. I often will share with my fellow entrepreneur friends and say, hey, you know, most investors are really lazy, right? We just like to hang out and drink wine and eat pizza.
Slightly true.
And so I like to encourage people to give me mental shortcut. Are you the Uber for X? But Uber is sort of outdated, so don't do that. But you know, certain platform where it's like people can see visually how that, and then you sort of so it's a shortcut. If you have to use like 3 or 4 sentences to explain what you're working on, is tough, right? Because you just can't get it, or you just can't work with that. A couple other things also. I think there's certain industry we're just bad at, right? We're not good at hardware. We're not going to be the accelerator to help you. And I love the guys from Hacks and Highway 1. They're all like really qualified hardware manufacturing expert. We're not that, right? We're really about marketing. I'm fascinated by genomics, but I mean, if you come and work on a CRISPR-Cas9 stuff, cool, I'm fascinated, but we really can't help you. So there's a whole bunch of industry, really is sort of is me, not you problem, that you know, we do direct investment. Having said that, we are a VC firm after all, but of course we want you to come to the accelerator because like our terms are so good, right, for us.
Right. So if I'm a founder that, let's say I've had a semi-successful exit in the past, so this isn't the first time I'm starting a company. I built an MVP, I'm gaining some traction, I'm kind of keeping up with metrics. Why do I need to join an accelerator, or do I need to join an accelerator?
I think there's a lot of second or third time founders that I have funded decide not to join the accelerator, which is completely understandable because you already sort of learn your chop. So in that case, let's say recently I done an investment like Silk Lab, which is the former CTO of Mozilla, AI Sense, which sold Aloha to Alibaba. I mean, these guys are awesome. We still do direct investment, and still the check size is 100K to 200K, and in that sense, no fixed term. We sort of go with that. But I think like the key thing is a lot of the founders, which actually we have a handful of founders will do YC and 500. That depends on like what stage of what kind of needs that they need. I think the key value proposition for us is definitely marketing and growth.
Distribution.
Yep.
Okay, right on. What is say a startup? I get this question quite a bit. I applied to YC and 500 and I got declined. What should I do? What is your advice to startups like this?
So one of my very, very first companies that I worked with is a company called Strikingly. And at the time, I think it was just so long ago, I don't want to date myself. They applied for YC once and got rejected.
Right.
And I started as a developer, so if I have nothing to do, I actually like to build websites. And Strikingly is sort of, you create your own mobile enabled site. And I think at the time, I think 500 as well, like invested in other website builder. So in YCK it was Whipley. So I actually encouraged the team, David and those guys are now in Shanghai, to reapply. So I think the key thing about application is not like like you apply for Harvard or Stanford, you get rejected, and then you're already like 25 years old and you still get rejected and your life is over. It's not about that. It's actually about a process of realizing, another 6 months go by. There are actually a lot of things that you learn and you grow up as a CEO and founder that we absolutely encourage people to reapply again and again. Because you based on those questions, you become a better CEO in terms of pitching. And we have absolutely taken companies that apply for the third or fourth time because they're like persistent.
Okay, so I think let's combine some of that advice you gave us earlier. So the story is, if you fail at both, go back, spend some money on marketing, show some growth. 6 months later, come back, try again.
I am like on a different note, right? I also invest in things like AI. I think one of your colleagues was asking me a lot of questions about AI. This by nature is unless you're Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon with tons of data, most of the AI related things is B2B. So in that's the case, it's all about your ability to do deal making and have unfair advantage to access to certain sets of data. So you don't have to build it from scratch.
Much of the program is focused on demo day, and of course, everyone is really excited about raising at demo day, and typically have the objective of raising a round shortly after demo day. What are kind of some, I guess, how much do startups typically raise at demo day on average, or kind of what are the kind of different groups?
Yeah. So what I do found that most of the investors who come to our demo day are U.S. focused. So what that means is, I have definitely seen founders that is not from the U.S., and if they're going after, let's say, from Southeast Asia and want to stay in Southeast Asia, unfortunately, most of the U.S. guys don't invest in startups that they can't drive to and see, right? So in that sense, usually those guys may or may not be able to raise funds. So I do wanted to put it out there. Having said that, there are also non-US and want to go after the US market. And if that's the case, usually right after the accelerator, they stay and set up offices. Those guys, if you're going after US market and usually local, I do sometimes find that, even you're from New York and Chicago, you have a harder time than Silicon Valley, like local startup in terms of raising money. I would say anywhere, like range is 200, 300K. I would say on average, I have seen lately is like $500,000, or some really extreme case. Recently, we have I think called Homido or something, raise an A for Sequoia right after. So that's extreme. So there's it all depends, all about traction actually.
Right on. Okay, what are reasons if a startup doesn't? If they fail to raise entirely after demo day, what are reasons for that to happen?
Other than sort of the geographic
Other than the
focus,
geographic focus, absolutely.
It's all numbers. And I think, the whole point, in particular with 500 startups, people have a lot of expectation because you come from marketing and growth. We have much better pitching coach than I am, but almost 100% of them will, if you don't have month-over-month 20-30% growth, or even if they don't have month-over-month, they talk about week-over-week, which I think is sort of bullshit, but it's sort of from 1 to 2, 2 to 4 is not really, like, it's 100% growth. But you really have to think, how to prepare for that. So my suggestion is, if you really come through 500 Startup Program, you should set your fundraising goal, but the even more important is your growth target. Because the expectation of the investor could come is expected you come to the program to learn so much that you see results.
Right.
Otherwise, we fail also.
Yep.
So we definitely sort of push you for these two areas.
So is there like a proper timing? How does a startup think about timing of when they should join an accelerator? Because I'm sure some of these examples where someone goes out for demo day and doesn't raise anything, they were just probably, many of them, I having gone to many demo days, were just much earlier than the other companies that did. So how does a startup evaluate the timing of when they know this is the right time to join Accelerator, and in 3 months I'm going to raise that A from Sequoia after demo day?
Yeah.
Or to position themselves for that at least.
I think regardless of joining an accelerator or not, the accelerator obviously, I think the key thing is so much about education. But let's say even you don't do accelerator and just want to raise a seed, then with or without accelerator, you start thinking about it, which I have no idea like what stage. How many of you actually have raised money before? Okay. How many of you have raised seed? How many of you raised A? Oh, wow. Okay. B, C, and above? Okay. No one. All right. Then everybody else thinking about it. So let's say you start from scratch, and usually start with friends, family, and fools, and your own money. Let's start with that first, right? And by the way, I think that if you are doing mobile, it's just so easy to launch an app these days. You really don't need a whole lot of money. And then for B2B, it's actually, sometimes I suggest people don't even build anything. Just sell it first. That's actually, I think, is even more important. It doesn't take any money either. So to sort of focus on these things, and then you have to think about, all right, when do I need to hire, let's say other than you and your co-founder, everybody just eat ramen for a few months to build some basic MVP. I would usually think about, investor or angel investor, it's like dating, right? you need to have those stands. Like no one was just going to give you a check on the spot unless you're just amazing third or fourth time founder. But you really have to sort of do a lot of homework. And those homework include, number one, as I mentioned, location, check size, and vertical, and stage. And I mentioned earlier, like I've been looking at more like mobile AI type things. Like if you like asking me about like clean tech, I had no clue, right? So not all investors created equally. But I think like the key thing is really have a scope and lay of the land and a strategy, and think about, okay, how much money can I last with, do I have in my pocket to eat ramen till when, right? And I would actually do, when you want money, to start building relationship with investor, you ask for advice first. Barrett, I really want to hear your thoughts about X, Y, and Z. I'm not pitching now, but I'm building this, and I'm hoping that I can get to this by this date. Really, is just to lure him in. Hey, you're legit. Like, and then next time you see this person, you keep them updated with numbers. I'm gonna update you and say, hey, I grow 50%. Based on what we talked about last month, I'm seeing progress. And by the way, I'm like, oh, I just hired a person from Facebook. Right. It's awesome. So like people's kind of seeing, you will for sure at least get a meeting, right? But you almost sort of like need to, plan for that. This is a little bit more tactical. If I usually would sort of time it in like within 1 week, I'm gonna raise soon. And then when you raise, you basically boom, 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 you see hundreds in a very, very short time to create momentum. Because you don't want to, I think some of our founders too, even gone through 500, and because it's so tiring, to raise money. Your target is $1 million, you raise half. And you're like, oh, okay, like I'm done. But you never finish. So then you end up have to stop working on product and come back fundraising again. Right. It happens all the time, but it's because you don't plan well. And by the way, I know like most investors are kind of lazy, so a lot of people go on vacation during the summer. You just don't find anyone. So I think that there's season for everything, from I would say September, Thanksgiving, like hot month. And then after that, Thanksgiving, Christmas is just a sort of low time. And then after CES, it started up again till summer. So you sort of have to think about how long can you last. And if I raise in March, you probably should make sure that you can last till at least February. That would be sort of my thought process. So there's like, you have to plan all these.
Yeah, that's really great advice about the timing. That's really good insights. So let's talk a little bit about follow-ons. How often does 500, what is 500's policy on follow-ons? Do you have a policy meaning we maintain pro rata for every graduating startup, or what's the policy?
Yeah, so we do have a standard 250,000 pro rata. This is a fixed amount because we're a seed fund, so we're actually thinking about doing an opportunity fund because sometimes like we do so many deals, we don't have enough follow-on. So it's definitely something that we're working on. But if you do well, happy to follow on. But sometimes, like it happened a few times with me too. Like I have certain companies that I'm looking at, like they raise A and have a lead and looks good, but it's all about, as an investor, I'm gonna think, okay, I have another $200,000. Should I do this? Right. Do I believe that this is gonna, 10x minimum my money, or it's okay to let it dilute a little bit because I'm already early enough. So again, it's all back to numbers.
Right on. And with 500, since you are often investing so early and among the first investors, for those companies that, let's say Twilio, I'm interested to know, how did 500 maintain pro rata over time? For companies like Twilio, do you maintain where pro rata will become hundreds of $1 million possibly, or at least tens of millions of dollars? Or do you sell off some shares along the way?
Yeah, so Twilio was our first IPO that, finally waited forever, for 7 years. I think what usually happened are a couple things. So it's one of those things, you have awesome company, not only you want to hold on to those shares, you want to buy more, right? So our biggest dilemma as a seed fund is we don't have enough money. So sometimes if we do have pro rata right, we may syndicate because we do have the rights. So we may set so that you can just do it use I think $8,000 these days using angel lists and set up a syndicate, and then oftentimes we'll invite our LPs to come and join the syndicate. So at least
SPV.
Yeah, SPV.
Right.
And there's another case, a really, really great marketplace.
I'm sorry, SPV, special purpose vehicle, just allows an investor to go out and raise a fund just for one single purpose. So Twilio, maintaining pro rata is $20 million. I don't have that in my fund, that sort of fund available, so I'm going to go raise a fund just to maintain that pro rata. Okay,
that's correct. So in this case, we do this special purpose vehicle just to invest in this one entity, and that's it. There's also cases where we get in so early, and the company was doing so well. A later stage investor may come to us and say, hey, do you want to sell some of your shares? And in that case, sometimes we'll be like, no, this is doing so well. But sometimes, because we're so early, it doesn't hurt to sell a little bit, right? So in that case, we have some return, and then already get a cost back.
It'll buy some time with your LPs as well.
That's correct.
Appease them a little bit.
Yeah, so that happened as well.
I'm sure. Okay, so 500. When did 500 start your accelerator program, or how many years has it been around?
7 years.
7 years, right? So how has the accelerator model evolved and changed over time? How is 500 kind of innovating the idea of the accelerator?
I think we started, the first one was like less than 10 companies. And now we're doing anywhere from 30 to 50 companies, as I mentioned. I think there's so many changes over time. But I think like the key thing that recently we've been learning as well is doing a special, like vertical track.
Okay.
The one that I actually really, I don't actually participate like a lot on the accelerator, but the fintech track actually I found it super interesting because fintech company, like I'm not a fintech expert, so a lot of times I look at the startup actually like to work with banks, talk to insurance companies. It's actually quite a bit of like B2B conversation, got involved. So in that sense, like we were able to build a community which is all like banking related. We do like a separate fintech focused demo day and facilitate a lot of these BD conversation. And we would love to do more of that. On the AI, we have another colleague, I think his name is Chris, I forgot his last name. So he's actually working on an AI track for the accelerator. So usually what that means is anywhere from like 5 to 10 companies within our existing infrastructure, but they do extra classes and demo day and all that.
Right on. I also think you guys do some shorter sessions, right, in various countries. Distro, I think has a new name though.
Yeah, it's like a Series A program.
Okay.
So for us, I actually particularly are doing more and more China-US related deals, and so in that sense, like I actually spend most of the time in China now, but we have team in like Korea, Japan, most of the country in Southeast Asia, London, Israel, Brazil, Mexico City, like everywhere, and in some certain cities, and particularly the one that, let's say in London, we have a whole bunch of European companies that actually want to come to the US, but they already raised enough money. And we have expertise to help them to think about, and actually, again, it's like a strategy growth. We do we're testing as well. This is nothing formal yet, but maybe like a 1 month program, but very, very specific goals. Usually, again, is about marketing, but marketing for US market. I'm actually been brainstorming with a couple folks for China market. Lately, there are more and more, I think, international entrepreneur in China from day one thinking about international, no longer just China market. Or the other way around, like more and more particular commerce related, curious about how you figure out Ali and Taobao. And so maybe like we'll do something in Hangzhou, who knows.
Right. So over the last few years, I've seen a lot of what were seed investors and also seed accelerators move a little bit later. So kind of everyone has went from seed to kind of this pre-A. I'm generalizing, of course. It just seems like everyone's looking for traction at this point for institutional checks. What do you tell to startups? The many startups, I'm sure, come to you and say, "I want to join 500," and you look at them and you say, "Well, you're not quite there yet." What do you tell them? But then they say, oh, I still need to raise money in order to build this runway, in order to get the kind of traction that 500 is looking for. What is your advice for getting the first check?
I think because now 500 startups, and I'm sure YC is the same too, is so
Right.
competitive.
Mm-hmm.
You again, you really have to do your homework. Actually, it doesn't hurt to ask the investor, hey, even I don't get accepted, what will be your expectation for my vertical that you have seen in terms of numbers that, after launch 12 months. So then you can have some benchmark. And you'll be surprised how open, particularly if you're working on something not sort of going to space or autonomous car, if it's existing platform, most of the folks will tell you. As I mentioned earlier, if it's SaaS, it's not uncommon for us to see, at least 10 to 30,000 MRR. So therefore, that will be my benchmark, right? And then a lot of times, don't get me wrong, I still would like to build a relationship. You just never know. And if there are certain things that I have experience with, usually I like to play with it. So then I can get a sense, is that even have good product market fit? And that's why I think more and more firms, not just 500, have the domain expertise. So what you want to do also is to ask a particular partner, hey, do you invest in fintech? If not, is there any other partner within the same firm focus on the domain that I'm working on? Because the most investors wanted to be helpful, but sometimes they're just not helpful because they don't know what you're working on.
Yep.
So I think it's good to just ask up front, hey, have you, and the key question would be, have you done any deals in drone? Actually, I was just looking at a drone deal. I have no idea what's good, what's bad, right? So a lot of times either I'll go find an industry expert. I'll do that too if my existing team don't have any, that particular vertical expertise. Lately, I was talking to your colleague. I'm really into China education, right? So what I do, spend time all day long. Okay, not all day long, but I've been actually sitting in these education center in China. I'm just watching, and it's so fun. But I felt like I have to get back to the basics. So then I know these guys are not bullshitting me,
Well, that sounds interesting. What have you learned sitting in those education centers?
China particularly is so amazing because it's a lot of offline revenue. So if you go to these centers, regardless it's New Oriental or Tao or Chimbury, the manager usually would be able to tell you this is per square foot, per square foot per month per year. So if they're looking at a piece of, I have invested one particular Piper I love. Is a STEM education content. It's like a robotics and programming. Of course, I want to pimp out my startup to go to China, but I realize the local operator is so good. In their head, they're calculating, okay, this is going to make me another $10,000. So you can't underestimate the power of, particularly in China, grassroots marketing. That's so efficient. So there's a lot of learning to do, and by the way, even though I'm really all for cross-border, I think is awesome. If you're too early, you really shouldn't. I will be doing a disservice for you if I try to get you to go to a brand new market in a foreign language this early. But of course, we obviously could see there's certain industry that Chinese consumer are really fighting for.
Right on. Back to kind of fundraising for early stage. Do you have any advice to startups that are considering alternative forms of funding, whether that be through equity crowdfunding or, of course, the hot word these days, ICO?
Oh, I've been studying ICO. I think it's fascinating. I wish, if I'm the founder again, why give equity away if I can raise $250 million without, giving any equity?
Just make sure your wallet is secure, please. So, what, $35 million was hacked from 3 different ICOs today.
Yep. It's definitely a really hot topic. I wish that I'm the entrepreneur today, that I can raise all this money. But I think the key thing, most of the investors are really perplexed around this. But I was looking at ICO more say, actually putting back my developer and marketing hat on to find commonality of work will work with ICO and work won't. And most of these are actually super geeky things that have really at least 20, 40 pages of white paper describing this is how I'm going to use blockchain for X, right? and describe really, really clearly, like if they raise X number of Ethereum or whatever, they're going to use it for marketing, for development, and with no equity. So I'm like looking at all this. I'm like, it'd be awesome if I'm building a company and raise ICO. Like, why would I go through painful experience with investor and trying to do that? But for investor, we are trying to understand it.
Yeah.
And it's been fascinating
Yeah.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think I'm one of the ones you mentioned that is just confused so far. So, right, especially, I mean, because when we invest in a company, we don't consider that the investment could then be hacked and stolen a day later. That's a completely new risk from an investor perspective, right? Which is kind of what's happening today. All right, so moving on, we're about wrapping up. I just got a few questions left, so start thinking of your own questions. What we love to do in this event is to allow everyone plenty of time for questions. So we'll have about 15 to 20 minutes for your own questions, so think about that. So a couple of last questions. So Dave McClure obviously has been one of the face of 500 startups from the beginning. And now Dave's left 500. How is 500 evolving, changing, remorphing in kind of this new chapter?
I would absolutely be lying to you if I said there's no impact, because obviously Dave is a founder and have made a lot. Well, I don't endorse what he did, but he did actually a lot of good for the community as well. So 500, by the numbers, like as I mentioned earlier, 1,700 startup, 25% of our funded startup have at least one woman on the founding team. And then 1/3 of our staff, including actually most of the partners, 1/3 are all women, including myself, if you can't tell. And we actually started 2 years ago, have a women-focused syndicate on AngelList. So we actually really, and plus on top of that, we've done so well with a lot of women founders. A SlideShare with Rashmi Singha, Wildfire with Victoria Ransom, so to Google. So just a lot of really good women founders we have funded. So I think going forward, for the last few weeks, I have so many conversations in regards to this. And I think 500 definitely have built a really, really strong community. I just got back from home, and I was worried, actually. We had an event with Alibaba in Hong Kong, but 300-400 people show up, and still 500 really strong, and hopefully 500 even stronger. But definitely adjustment period for us. I think going forward is a lot of change management for us to make sure that this won't happen again. But then I think our whole philosophy of supporting women founder will continue, and definitely we're going even stronger.
Right. You mentioned numerous times. You mentioned international investments, international kind of initiatives of 500, and this is something I've always been impressed. I mean, I worked with 500 when I was based in Beijing, or I worked with Dave, I think, before 500 existed. But it was when helping him with his trips into Beijing. And from the beginning, 500 was all about international investments, beyond not just Silicon Valley, which is very unique. Do you think that more investors should be be more open to international investments?
I think that all investors and all fellow entrepreneurs, if you're not paying attention to what's going on in China, I'll give you another 2-3 years. Like I really feel that Silicon Valley, in so many ways, particular fintech, are really behind compared to China. So I think for the rest of the world, this is only my point of view, but obviously I'm biased because I'm Chinese. But on a different note, also, I think the trend overall in the world, you can quote me on that. For when I work on Dolphin, I went to Russia, Vietnam, China, obviously, Southeast Asia, all over the world to do all these deals. Maybe either there's some communists, because Russia, China, and Vietnam all have their own search, own social, own everything, right? So it's quite unique as a independent ecosystem. And the rest of the world, regardless is Europe, Latin America, most Southeast Asia actually use US-based product in terms of search, social, similar thing. So which means user acquisition is actually quite similar in terms of doing deals, but Russia, China, and Vietnam, very, very different. Which leads into those trees with no Apple, no Google, no Facebook. They have a very unique way of different sort of invention. I'm sure that you do the same thing. For the last few months I've been in China, I didn't even have to open my wallet once. The taxi driver don't even want to give me change. Just like, can you just either use Alipay or WeChat Pay? It's just so convenient. Every time I come back, I felt like it's backwards. So I actually think going international is not just a nice to have. We are international citizens. We need to open up our horizon to learn what is going on in the world, to better adjust. I think, frankly, like Facebook Messenger been copying WeChat the whole time. But how do you get those inspirations? By going international to really learn. Even you make a conscious decision that you're not going to go overseas, but at least you know. I think that's the key thing, is to really gain that knowledge by going international and just learn.
Right. And it's the same for entrepreneurs, not just investors, right? Right. All right, on that, we will end my questions. It is now all of your turn to ask. So I'm going to hand my mic off to Ryan. Raise your hand.
Questions?
Good evening. My name is Abdul. I'm from Senegal, West Africa. My company's name is Volcano, and we're into education technology. So my question is, you mentioned investment in international investment, but what about Africa? And not just English Africa, but also French-speaking or Lusophone Africa. What are your takeaways on that? Thank you.
We, for Africa, I actually, Egypt doesn't count. But anyway, we actually just organized a Geeks on the Plane Africa that happened in March. So we actually brought a group of investors and entrepreneurs to visit a handful of countries, I think Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, just more like to learn, but doesn't make us an expert at all. I would say that, unfortunately, even though it's such a huge potential market, as I mentioned earlier, things like M-Pesa, which been super advanced in terms of mobile payment, they've been in Africa for a long time. US is actually quite behind. So there's a lot of things that I think the investor here need to learn and explore and understand. But unfortunately, it's not necessarily things that you want to hear. I think most of the Silicon Valley investors are quite ignorant. So if you're here to explore, maybe potentially, hey, I really wanted to raise money here, you need to know that it will be a challenge. But having said that, I think being here, you're already taking the first step, is to think about what other education technology company that is similar to yours. Actually go and visit those guys first. I mean the founders. Because then first you can understand how they run. You can learn from them because it's similar. And sort of what sort of pitch point. Usually the minute you say education technology company, I will ask you a whole bunch of follow-up questions. Is it consumer or is it B2B? What sort of age group? Just more get a better sense. So to start, I will probably sort of get a better one-liner, but you can learn so much from these other founders. The founders are the best group of people to help you to refer to investors. Because no investor want to say no to the founder they already put money in. So it's a great way to get intro to invest. Of course, if the founders are comfortable. I think that a little bit the other way around. One of, I think, the best deal ever on earth is done by a South African investor, which is Naspers, which still haven't sold a single share of Tencent. I think still own 33 or 34%. So surprisingly enough, this is the deal of the century. It's done by somebody who is actually not in the Valley, to a Chinese company, right? So there's tons of things that's going on, I think, internationally. But I look forward to going to visit South Africa. I can't wait, actually. But hopefully soon, maybe next year.
Hi, thank you for this interesting and frank conversation. Appreciate it. My name is Sangeeta, and the name of my company is HelpC. We focus on automating clinical work to save the clinician's time. So my question for you is that for healthcare companies, digital health companies, once you build a product, you made it HIPAA compliant, you see there is a need in the market, there is a certain amount of investment that's needed to operationalize at a hospital, even to do pilots or to do marketing, because in healthcare, the exhibits and the booths are pretty expensive. So to go to your earlier point where you're looking for a certain adoption rate before you do investment, how does that fit in for the healthcare space specifically, like especially like when it's B2B?
Yeah, I think we have not done enough of a good job in terms of investing in B2B healthcare to start. And then I am also not a healthcare person to look at these sort of, but we do have 2 people on the 500 teams that are like that's their focus. So I'm happy to, and usually in a situation like this, it's actually a perfect way to meet investor, right? That who is investor in the house other than me? Okay, you scared of, okay, all right. So usually the way that I will respond to you, I'll tell you, like, I'm not an expert. If I have done something before, I will ask you, like, fire up a whole bunch of questions. But usually I would ask you, hey, can you send me a short blurb? Because you're B2B, so I will hope that hopefully you come from that background and hopefully have some unfair advantage in certain clinic or hospitals so that you have some foot in the door. And in your short intro, if you have things to brag about, if you haven't launched, usually I would brag about the team. Hey, we're all like X, fill in the blank, team that worked together for X number of years, and our proprietary is HIPAA compliance, and just I have like, I don't know, 5,000, pending, whatever, filing and patent pending and all that stuff. I will like brag as much as possible, so at least you can get a meeting. But that short intro need to be super clear. You can't be an essay, otherwise I'd be like, oh my God. Like, so what I usually would do is, on something that I don't know, will pick the expert and forward it to them and ask for permission. Hey, would you like to check this out? And usually for the expert, they would tell me right away, not interested, interested. So at least I have something I can respond back to you. Yeah.
Hi. My name is Marie. Oh, hi. My name is Mariko Araya, and I'm from Lady Maria AI Wedding Planner app. And I hear from you that 500 Startup really focus on marketing. And I was wondering, what is like the big failures startups come with in the marketing space that you guys help with? I wanted to hear more about 500 Startups specialty in the marketing space, for more detail.
I see. I can give you a whole bunch of names, sort of not exactly the wedding space, but sort of in the, I guess, women. We invested in a whole bunch actually. Stylesy, Ipsy. I can't even name it all, but we definitely have done a lot of commerce and marketplaces. I just got an update from this company called Babylist, who's doing amazing. So definitely we have done a lot of consumer-focused marketplaces and commerce. And we also have people just focusing on that. So whenever that happens, we will usually look for partners who have done similar deals, and then ask them for, hey, what is some of the basic metrics after you launch for 3-4 months for US market? What are some of the numbers that you look at? And then so we can give you a little bit more concrete feedback.
Hello, my name is Mirsad. I am representing a company called Playonomics. And I was just wondering, actually, the whole investor field, right, is in the Silicon Valley, everybody talks about tech companies, tech, right? What is some of your recommendations for companies who are not necessarily in the tech realm? So for example, in human resourcing or entertainment or something of that sort. What can you say as far as raising seed money, seed funds, or going to Series A for companies that are not necessarily this standard in the Silicon Valley, so to speak, like tech companies or whatever?
So I obviously focus on tech, but recently, actually, particularly for China, I've run into a lot of entertainment-related potential deals. Actually, live streaming is a huge thing in China. And lately, Chinese started to pay for content too, so it's also entertainment related. And in fact, actually, 2 of my best performing companies, Hook and Data Cook, are both content related. you can consider that an entertainment. So I think like the key thing is like I don't invest in like studio or like pure for content, movie studio or like animation. That is not my thing, right? So if that's the case, I feel like, but don't quote me on it, it seems like there would be more absolutely in like Hollywood. There's actually a handful of, I don't remember the name, I can get you the names afterwards, that they literally label themselves, they only invest in entertainment, right? So usually those sort of metrics and benchmark, since I'm not an expert, they have their own thing. But it just seems like there's so many sort of ex-legendary or Pixar guys. I have invested in 2 VR sort of content-related companies, and both of these guys are like ex-Oculus and Pixar folks that have came out and working on those. So that would be entertainment. I really think that every single vertical, there are people specialize on it. And a lot of times what I would do is to find companies' name in that category, and I just use Crunchbase quite a bit. So let's say you're in real estate, then go figure it out who invested in WeWork, let's say. Entertainment, there are tons of studio in LA is getting funded, and so is China as well. And you know, WME, Legendary, even like the Disney of the world are investing also. So it's not difficult to figure out who they are, but it's just a matter of like, you know, sort of navigate and your framework of, can you get to those founders who can introduce you? Can you like, maybe you just do cold email, but it's so written that they have to respond to you. But you can find everybody, because you know, like you realize investing, like is our job. We have to deploy. I can't like sit on my ass and do nothing, right? I have to meet founders. If I'm not deploying like capital, I have a problem too. So whole thing being an investor is hopefully, who knows, like maybe, you know, you're going to be the next Elon Musk, and we want it to be as nice as possible. Of course, we respectful for each other's time, but I think like the key thing is that be as clear about what you're working on and figure it out who is in your vertical and ecosystem. That's the key thing. Like I can't help you with entertainment, but somebody can. And I think a lot of these data are quite open these days. You can find out who they are.
Hi, my name is Trisha Bright. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Good Social. And as the name suggests, I'm a social impact entrepreneur. And I'm wondering what the perspective is at 500 Startups on companies that have a double bottom line focus. So my shorthand way to describe that is profits with purpose. Do you invest in those sorts of firms? Thank you.
Yeah, we recently, and I apologize, I don't know the exact terms, but we either invest or we worked with Planned Parenthood. It was actually an initiative we were actually working on, and I believe YC actually have invest and work with a nonprofit as well. And I don't know if we're making a whole initiative out of it, but we absolutely have worked with like social impact startups before. Yeah. For profit, but social enterprise, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Last question.
Hi there, my name is John. I'm the founder of a company called Andhaka. We do AR and VR data visualization for oil and gas. For an enterprise company, what sorts of metrics do you look for investment? You mentioned a number of POCs that are live, but given more capital needs to get to a POC, what sort of metrics do you look for?
So if you start with no metrics, so I can't force you with any metrics, right? But I think like with B2B is really to think through, to have a better sense is if you understand the sales cycle, the potential size of the market, and if you do land a pilot, what does that mean like in terms of the actual contract that you will be able to land? So let's say a lot of times, like this morning I was talking to a San Diego entrepreneurs. They do amazing, awesome robots, but I mean, they have a very, very hard time getting pilot. And even they do one pilot, they don't buy. So it's really a matter of like looking at, just the tech is not enough. You have to see, do I have an awesome product person plus a really good salesperson? And in fact, if you're really good with sales, sometimes you can sell it first without no product, which is all of my Oracle and Siebel companies before. There's no product. They sell millions of dollars. So in that case, it's really thinking through, Would you be able to land a whole bunch of these pilot early, and then after the pilot, you can actually get, at least, 6-digit type value? Hopefully that helped.
All right, thank you very much, Edith. Let's give her a round of applause.